We begin in a world still finding its balance. A young earth long before the idea of a carnivorous plant could sprout in anyone's imagination. The continents are quiet sculptures of stone, their surfaces only recently brushed by the first courageous forms of plant life. These early pioneers are simple creatures by comparison to their modern descendants. Thin stems, tentative leaves, and a deep, unwavering trust that sunlight alone will carry them through whatever this new land-based lifestyle demands. They stand in loose gatherings along damp shorelines and shallow floodplains, like newcomers at a party who aren't quite sure where the snacks are but insist they are perfectly comfortable. Before we quietly explore how carnivorous plants evolved, take a gentle moment to like and subscribe to the Late Night Scientist channel, and let me know in the comments when and where you're listening, so this peaceful science can reach more sleepy listeners looking to drift off. Life on land is an experiment, and these first plants are the prototypes. They absorb the soft light of a sun that shines through hazier skies. They sway in breezes that have never before met a leaf. Their bodies are small, their ambitions even smaller, and they live by a rule as old as plants themselves. Take what the soil gives you and politely avoid asking for more. The soil, for its part, offers a support system that's encouraging, though somewhat unreliable. Like a friend who promises to help you move but shows up mostly for the pizza. These early soils lack richness, structure, and meaningful nutrient content, and yet the plants trust them fully, assuming generosity where little actually exists. In this slow world, almost nothing moves quickly. Rivers shift over centuries. Mountains rise with the patience of stone. The plants grow in equally measured rhythms, adding a leaf here, a branching stem there. Always careful, always steady. Their roots sink just deep enough to anchor them, but seldom farther. They are not explorers so much as quiet settlers, content to remain where they first sprouted. If any early plant had ever written a self-help manual, it would likely have been titled Photosynthesis, a complete strategy for life, because that was, in their opinion, the entire plan. Light in, sugar out, and repeat. Animals do exist at this time, though not the kind that would make our modern hearts leap in recognition. The land hosts small arthropods, primitive insects and their relatives, tiptoeing across the landscape with the same trepidation as the plants. They are curious, light-footed wanderers, inspecting mossy textures, climbing stems that offer no reward, and occasionally falling off them with the grace of creatures unaccustomed to gravity. The plants take no offense. They simply tolerate these visitors like landlords who never expected tenants and aren't entirely sure what to say. Importantly, no one is eating anyone yet. The insects do not nibble much on plants, and the plants certainly don't consider the insects edible. The idea would be unthinkable. Leaves absorbing animals? Preposterous. These early species live in parallel lines, intersecting only by accident. The plants watch the insects crawl by in the vague way one might watch clouds, acknowledging their existence without feeling the need to interact. And the insects, for all their wandering, have no fear of a misplaced step. A leaf, after all, is just a leaf, But beneath this tranquil surface, change is quietly underway. The world is warming, shifting, diversifying. Waters evaporate, minerals settle differently, and ecosystems begin to take shape. The air grows richer in oxygen as plants steadily exhale it, reshaping the atmosphere one breath at a time. With every generation, plants are testing new strategies: slightly thicker leaf walls, slightly deeper roots, slightly more efficient pigments. All of it is incremental, almost imperceptible. But evolution has endless patience. It doesn't rush. It whispers suggestions to DNA and sees who takes the hint. You can almost imagine evolution perched nearby, chin in hand, watching these early plants with fond exasperation. Here are organisms that trust the soil far more than it deserves, relying on a nutrient supply scarcely worthy of the word supply. They reach for the light and accept the ground as it is, never considering alternatives. If evolution had eyebrows, it might raise one and think, one day they're going to realize the soil isn't pulling its weight. But that revelation lies far ahead in the story. For now, the earth is peaceful. No dramatic chases, no snapping traps, no sly tendrils waiting for a telltale vibration. The plants remain gentle participants in their world, still believing that sunlight will always be enough and that nutrients will always come from the ground beneath them. In a sense, they're optimistic, naively so, but endearingly. They have no suspicion that challenges are coming, that soils will grow harsher in certain corners of the world, that competition for resources will escalate, that survival might eventually require creativity. But every great story begins long before its turning point, and this one is no exception. These early plants stand as the quiet prologue of an evolutionary tale that will stretch across hundreds of millions of years. Their leaves tremble softly in the wind. Their shadows fall gently over damp stone. They glow faintly with the first sparks of terrestrial life, blissfully unaware that their distant descendants will one day become some of the strangest, most inventive hunters the plant world has ever produced. For now, though, they rest, rooted, peaceful, and trusting the soil just a little too much. Their journey has only just begun. As Earth's landscapes continue to shift and diversify, new ecosystems rise from the slow dance of water and land. Wetlands begin knitting themselves into the mosaic, broad, shimmering expanses where water lingers instead of flowing, where sediments collect, and where the world feels perpetually on the edge of drowning. To the plants watching from slightly drier ground, these wetlands appear lush and inviting. They glisten under filtered sunlight and breathe faint mists at dawn. From a distance, the bogs look generous, and like many things that appear generous, they have absolutely no intention of living up to that impression. Yet plants move in anyway. Not deliberately, of course. Seeds simply travel by whatever forces push them: wind, water, the occasional confused insect. Some of these seeds land in the new wetlands and germinate, sending tender roots downward with optimism bordering on naivete. The young plants do not yet realize they've entered one of evolution's more challenging neighborhoods. The trouble begins immediately. The soil, if one can even call this dark, oozing mixture soil, is soaked through with water that rarely drains. It is acidic, thick, oxygen-poor, and stingy with nutrients in the way only ancient, slow-decaying peat can be. The roots push into the muck and pause, confused. They search for nitrogen, for phosphorus, for anything remotely nourishing, but find little beyond decomposing plant remains breaking down at the speed of an indecisive snail. It is a place where nutrients are locked away, guarded as tightly as secrets in a forgotten diary. The young plants attempt to grow as they always have. They unfurl leaves, tilt them toward the sun, and wait for the soil to do its part. The soil, however, remains impressively uncooperative. Days pass, weeks. Growth slows to a reluctant crawl. Stems remain thin. Leaves remain small. Even the plants, which are not known for their critical thinking skills, begin to sense something is wrong. And here is where evolution leans in more closely. It observes the plant's predicament with the quiet interest of someone watching a puzzle unfold. These wetlands are brimming with life, hovering insects, drifting spores, microscopic swimmers flickering through the shallows. But none of this lively company is contributing nutrients to the plants themselves. The irony is not lost on evolution. These plants are surrounded by potential, yet none of it flows into their roots. If the soil were a store, it would be one with beautifully decorated windows and nothing on the shelves. Still, the plants persist. Persistence is one of their defining traits. Roots continue probing the saturated ground, adjusting, branching, trying new angles. A few manage to extract barely enough nutrients to survive. Others wither quietly without complaint, returning themselves to the peat layers that will one day challenge future generations just as harshly. Those that continue living do so by embracing an unfamiliar lifestyle, one that values survival over ambition. They stay small, stay slow, and let the environment dictate nearly everything. But living in difficulty has a way of nudging genetic variation into places it normally wouldn't go. A few plants develop subtle differences, slightly thicker cuticles, slightly altered chemistry, slightly more efficient ways of holding on to whatever fragments of nitrogen they stumble upon. These changes alone won't solve their problems, but they represent the first hints of evolutionary tension. When life becomes uncomfortable, the pressure to innovate increases. And innovation is, at its core, evolution's favorite pastime. Still, the plants at this stage have no idea where innovation might lead them. They merely exist in quiet wetlands, rising each morning through a mist that softens the world into watercolor. Tiny ripples spread where insects touch the water's surface. Frogs croak. The air smells of moss and slow decay. It is peaceful. Undeniably, but peace can be misleading. Beneath the surface, the bog is withholding essential nutrients with such consistency that it almost feels like policy. Some plants attempt to adapt by spreading their roots more widely, but the soil quickly discourages this. Others try growing taller to escape the constant dampness, but height requires nutrients they do not have. A few attempt to bloom early, spending precious resources in a last-ditch effort to pass on their genes, before exhaustion sets in. Most blooms are modest, small gestures of hope rather than confident proclamations. The wetland plants do not yet know they are standing at the threshold of one of evolution's strangest futures. They remain ordinary plants struggling in uncooperative mud, unaware that desperation can be a powerful architect. For now, the only noticeable change is a quiet unease, a sense of limitation pressing against their simple lifestyles. Their roots, once symbols of stability, feel more like anchors in unfriendly terrain. Still, nothing dramatic happens, not yet. These plants do not look carnivorous. They have no traps, no slick surfaces, no clever mechanisms. Their leaves lie open and plain, offering nothing more sinister than shade to whatever small creature wanders beneath them. To an observer, they seem entirely normal, just a bit undernourished and rather patient about it. But in the silence of the bog, evolution frowns thoughtfully. It senses opportunity and constraint. It feels the tension between need and supply, between soil and survival. And though millions of years stand between this moment and the dawn of true botanical predation, the path is beginning to curve gently, almost invisibly, in that direction. For now, the wetlands remain calm, hiding their nutrient poverty beneath a surface of serene water. The plants continue to trust the soil, even as it gives them nothing. And evolution, watching quietly, prepares to make its next move. In the quiet wetlands and marshy clearings where life moves at a slower rhythm, plants continue their patient experiment of survival. Their roots extend into soils that remain reluctant givers, yet above ground, their leaves begin to take on a subtle variety of shapes and textures. These leaves are not yet the cunning traps they will one day become, but they are growing more complex, lightly dusted with hairs and glands that shimmer faintly in the morning light. These structures initially evolve not for capture, but for far humbler purposes: defense against thirsty herbivores, protection from fungal growth, or simply the maintenance of moisture in a world that alternates unpredictably between drowning rains and drying winds. It is in this modest botanical experimentation that something unusual begins to happen. The insects roaming these early habitats, small, curious wanderers with more confidence than caution, tend to explore anything that catches the light. Some land on leaves out of curiosity. Others mistake droplets of plant secretions for real water. And a few simply misjudge where the leaf ends and the air begins. Many of them meet no trouble at all, walking away unscathed. But some land in precisely the wrong place at precisely the wrong moment. On a leaf whose glandular hairs have started producing tiny beads of sticky mucilage. These sticky droplets glisten, capturing sunlight in a way that hints at nourishment, but delivers none. An insect touches one and pauses. The droplet clings. The insect tugs, expecting to free itself easily. It is, after all, only a plant. But the droplet resists, stretching like thin syrup. Another step, another bead, and soon the insect finds itself anchored by an opponent that seems impossibly passive. There is no snapping, no movement, no aggressive tactic. Just the quiet insistence of a substance that refuses to let go. At first, The plant does nothing. The leaf remains open, placid, unmoved by the tiny struggle unfolding on its surface. The insect wiggles, twists, pulls, and, if it had the capacity for language, would likely offer a few complaints. Some insects break free and fly off, a little sticky but unharmed. Others, especially smaller or lighter ones, do not. They remain caught, wings pressed to the leaf, legs immobilized, energy spent in the futile attempt to escape. For a long time, this means nothing to the plant. The trapped insect simply becomes another still visitor in a world accustomed to slow decay. But nature rarely wastes an opportunity. As the insect's body begins to soften under the natural processes of decomposition, tiny amounts of nutrients, trace materials the plant desperately lacks, begin to seep into the film of moisture coating the leaf. The plant's surface tissues, adapted to absorbing ambient water, take in these dissolved molecules without hesitation. There is no intention behind it, no evolutionary strategy at play. It is simply a leaf doing what leaves do best, absorbing what comes into contact with it. Evolution, however, takes notice. This is not hunting, not in any way recognizable to future carnivorous plants. It is an accident, and a rather clumsy one at that. The plant did not lure the insect. It did not trap it knowingly. It did not digest it actively. Yet the result remains the same. Nutrients that would have been otherwise unavailable are now entering the plant through unconventional means. To evolution, a mechanism need not be elegant as long as it works, and this one does, at least slightly. Over countless generations, certain plants begin producing stickier droplets. Not intentionally, plants do not sit together in strategic meetings, but through subtle shifts in genetic expression. Some leaves develop hairs that hold onto insects more effectively. Others produce more mucilage or a stickier formulation of it. Insects continue to wander onto these leaves out of curiosity or sheer bad luck, and natural selection begins to lean, ever so gently, toward plants whose accidental stickiness grants them even the smallest nutritional advantage. Still, there is no recognition on the plant's part. These are not predators. They are quiet photosynthesizers who have stumbled upon a supplementary benefit without understanding it. If plants had expressions, these early species might wear one of mild confusion, wondering why leaves sometimes feel heavier than expected, but never questioning it further. They certainly do not celebrate the occasional insect that dissolves on their surfaces. They merely incorporate the nutrients into their tissues, reacting with the same calm neutrality they would exhibit toward a drizzle of rain. But evolution, always observing, begins to treat this as a draft of something greater. You can almost imagine it tapping its metaphorical clipboard, pretending the development of sticky traps was absolutely part of the long-term plan. Yes, of course, evolution would insist. I meant for this all along. The truth is far less grand. Life simply followed an accident to its logical conclusion. Meanwhile, the landscape remains serene. Plants still resemble their ordinary, non-carnivorous ancestors. Their leaves wave softly in the breeze. Their stems stretch modestly toward the sun. The sticky patches are small, scattered, and far from threatening. Even the insects, though occasionally ensnared, do not yet regard these plants as dangers. They are background scenery, fascinating perhaps, but no more alarming than a patch of moss or a puddle of rainwater. Yet the quiet transition has begun. A subtle line has been crossed, almost without notice. Plants have unintentionally tasted their first trace of animal-derived nutrients, absorbed completely by chance. And once evolution discovers that something works, even accidentally, it rarely forgets. This chapter of the story ends not with drama, but with a soft, sticky whisper. The first hint that a leaf might someday become more than a sun-catching surface. For now, these plants simply continue their lives, unaware that they have taken their earliest steps toward a fate no one could have predicted, least of all them. In the quiet wetlands where life's experiments unfold with the patience of ages, certain plants begin to undergo a subtle but profound transformation. Not in their shape, not yet, but in their chemistry, their microscopic inner workings, and the delicate choreography that takes place on the surface of their leaves. It begins with a simple realization, though not one the plants reach consciously. The small creatures that sometimes end up stuck on their leaf surfaces are not just unfortunate visitors. They are reservoirs of nitrogen, precious, elusive nitrogen, that the soil around them continues to withhold. At this stage, no plant has set out to become a predator, but a new kind of chemical curiosity begins to flicker into existence. It starts with a handful of mutations, tiny adjustments in the proteins responsible for breaking down organic debris. These proteins, originally meant for self-maintenance, recycling old cells, managing damage, healing wounds, begin to drift outward toward the leaf surface. Here, they encounter something unexpected: the softening remains of insects too firmly stuck to escape. The reaction is almost accidental. A dissolved amino acid enters the moisture layer coating the leaf. A transporter protein absorbs it, puzzled but compliant. And something in the plant shifts, a tiny chemical spark that, while insignificant on its own, hints at a revolutionary possibility. Over countless generations, these chance events accumulate, and enzymes begin appearing more consistently near the leaf's outermost layers, quietly preparing to break down whatever organic material lands upon them. The leaf, still an ordinary leaf to any observer, has become a surface capable of digesting. This transformation does not happen with any haste. Plants are famously unhurried, but across millennia, the relationship between leaf and insect changes. No longer does the plant merely absorb whatever nutrients happen to leak out during decomposition. Now it contributes to the process, coaxing trapped bodies into simpler forms that can be drawn inward. The plant does not hunt, chase, or even purposely ensnare. It simply learns to accept what the world places upon it. In the same serene manner it accepts sunlight, rain, and the gentle brushing of wind. One could say the plant has discovered something astonishing. All around it, insects buzz, crawl, and glide, each one a tiny bundle of nitrogen wrapped in chitin. If the plant possessed a sense of irony, it might recognize that it has been surrounded by potential nourishment all along, and that this nourishment required no roots to reach it. It was as though the plant had been standing on the fringes of a buffet, for thousands of years before finally sampling a dish and realizing, quite politely, that the menu was excellent. Not every plant in these wetlands participates in this quiet chemical awakening. Many continue living as they always have, relying solely on sunlight and the begrudging nutrients in the waterlogged soil. But those with even slightly enhanced ability to absorb nutrients through their leaves begin to gain an advantage, subtle at first, then increasingly noticeable. Their leaves grow marginally larger. Their reproductive efforts become more successful. Their stems hold themselves with a touch more confidence against passing breezes. And evolution, ever patient, takes note. Enzymes involved in external digestion become more refined. What begins as a general-purpose set of proteins, capable of dissolving whatever organic matter happens to be available, gradually specializes. Some enzymes focus on breaking down proteins, others on lipids, others on the stubborn structures of insect exoskeletons. Leaf surfaces begin to shift chemically, becoming zones of controlled breakdown, carefully regulated to avoid harming the plant's own tissues. Still, these early proto-carnivorous plants remain gentle in appearance. Their leaves do not snap shut or curl dramatically. They do not produce elaborate traps. They are simply exploiting a resource that, until now, they had overlooked. This newfound pathway of nutrient intake does not replace photosynthesis. It supplements it. The plants continue to reach for sunlight as eagerly as ever. They continue to turn the air into sugar, weaving their energy quietly through the green threads of their cells. But now, alongside that essential process, they have discovered an additional source of nourishment, one obtained without digging deeper into the soil or extending roots through uncooperative ground. To the plants, this is merely a shift in what their leaves can do. To evolution, it is the opening of an entirely new ecological niche. A vast portion of life's nitrogen is now accessible without depending on environmental generosity. This chemical flexibility sets the stage for an extraordinary diversification, though the leaves themselves remain unaware of their future potential. The wetlands go on as they always have, soft breezes rippling across still waters, insects drifting lazily over mossy banks. Nothing about the landscape suggests drama. Yet in these quiet places, an evolutionary boundary has been crossed. For the first time, a plant has become an active participant in the breakdown of an animal's body. For the first time, nutrients move inward through a pathway that does not involve roots. For the first time, a leaf is something more than a solar panel. The plants, unaware of the significance, continue their lives with the same calm rhythms as before. Their new capabilities do not make them fearsome or sinister. They make them efficient. They are not predators. They are opportunists, grateful collectors of what chance provides. And if a plant could smile, it might do so now, realizing that the world around it is not just scenery. It is sustenance, an entire banquet of small creatures drifting through the air, landing where they shouldn't, and offering, quite unintentionally, exactly what the plant has been missing for millennia. The plants will not rush to change further, but the door has opened, and evolution, quietly satisfied, steps through. In the slowly shifting wetlands where stillness is a defining characteristic, the plants that once absorbed nutrients from stuck insects begin to reshape themselves in subtle but consequential ways. Not through sudden transformations or dramatic gestures. Plants rarely indulge in those, but through countless generations of small refinements that ripple outward through time. A leaf widens by a fraction. A sticky droplet becomes slightly more adhesive. A scent molecule drifts a little farther on the breeze. Each shift is tiny, almost imperceptible, yet together they mark the quiet rise of the first passive traps. These leaves do not yet resemble the vivid flypaper traps found in modern carnivorous plants. Instead, they are broader and flatter than their ancestors, spreading outward like small green landing pads. Their surfaces glisten with droplets of mucilage, clear, glistening beads that hold sunlight as though the leaves have been decorated with tiny jewels. The effect is simple, but to an insect, such shimmer is irresistible. Curiosity, after all, has always guided the smaller creatures of the world, often to their benefit, and occasionally not. Insects approach these leaves with casual confidence. They have no evolutionary memory warning them that certain plants might be less harmless than they appear. A glint of moisture suggests a drink. A sweet scent suggests nectar. Even the geometry of the leaf, wide open, unthreatening, suggests a place to rest tired wings. Much like travelers drawn to a conveniently placed bench, insects land without hesitation. And then they stay. Not because they mean to, of course, but because the droplets spread beneath their feet and along their legs, stretching into sticky threads that cling more tightly the more the insect struggles. There is no snap, no curl, no movement whatsoever. The plant remains as motionless as it has always been, a master of stillness. The only thing that changes is the insect's trajectory, which shifts abruptly from mobility to reluctant anchoring. To witness this moment is to watch evolution's minimalist creativity in action. The trap does not move fast or at all. Its success depends entirely on patience and the unfortunate optimism of passing insects. A creature lands, tests the surface, finds itself held fast, and soon exhausts its energy trying to escape. Its wing beats slow, its legs strain, and finally it settles into resignation, whether it understands its predicament or not. The plant, still unmoving, waits. This strategy works for a simple reason. In an environment where nutrients are scarce, even small advantages carry tremendous weight. A plant that captures a handful of insects each season, perhaps no more than a few tiny mosquitoes or midges, can grow with a quiet confidence its neighbors lack. It gains nitrogen, phosphorus, and trace minerals from sources completely unrelated to the stingy soil beneath it. It does not have to chase or build elaborate machinery to do so. It only has to exist with a degree of stickiness that nature is more than willing to supply. Over generations, these plants refine their techniques further. Some leaves begin producing scents, faint, sweet aromas drifting on warm breezes. These scents are not bribes, strictly speaking. They are incidental chemicals that just happen to appeal to insects. Evolution, pretending absolute intentionality, allows these molecules to become slightly more attractive in plants whose sticky leaves benefit from a bit more foot traffic. Other species enhance their visual appeal. The droplets of mucilage catch sunlight in particularly enticing ways, refracting it so that the leaves seem dotted with miniature lenses. This alone is enough to intrigue insects, who investigate anything that glitters. Still others adjust their glandular hairs, spacing them so that an insect ensnared by one droplet is likely to encounter several more in quick succession. It is, in a sense, the earliest form of surface-level trap layering, a quiet web laid across a leaf. Yet through all of this, the plants maintain their commitment to doing almost nothing. They do not bend. They do not contract. They do not exhibit the flamboyant movements that future carnivorous plants will showcase. Their strategy is elegant precisely because it requires so little. They win by waiting. They thrive through patience. Their competence lies in their refusal to expend unnecessary energy. And in this simplicity, they find remarkable success. Insects, for their part, remain largely unsuspecting. There is no visual warning, no defensive display, no reason in their evolutionary history to fear a broad, glossy leaf. Many land without hesitation. A few notice something amiss too late, struggling as the adhesive threads stretch like clear taffy. Some escape with great effort. Others do not. The plant absorbs whatever nutrients seep into the thin layer of moisture coating its surface, an act so passive that calling it feeding feels almost too intentional. Over long stretches of time, entire lineages of flypaper-like plants emerge. They inhabit bogs, marshes, and misty clearings where insects are plentiful but nutrient-rich soils are not. They begin forming communities, small clusters of glistening leaves shimmering under soft sunlight. Their quiet presence shapes the behavior of insects in subtle ways, though full avoidance will not evolve for a very long time. For now, these plants occupy a unique niche, passive hunters who refuse to chase, refuse to snap, and refuse to apologize for winning simply by being a little sticky and a lot patient. Evolution rewards their unhurried efficiency, smoothing their surfaces, strengthening their adhesives, and refining the delicate balance between attraction and entrapment. And so the lineage of carnivorous plants takes another calm, deliberate step toward complexity, not through sudden ingenuity or dramatic leaps, but through the soft power of stillness. The world does not yet know what these plants will one day become. Neither do the plants. They simply rest in their wetland homes, shining gently in the sun, waiting for the next curious insect to land, and offering no explanation at all for their success. As the quiet march of evolution continues through the misty wetlands, a new experiment begins to take shape. One that will redefine what a leaf can be. The wide, sticky traps of earlier generations remain successful, but nature is never content to settle for a single strategy when an entire world of possibilities waits to be explored. And so, in certain plant lineages, a curious architectural shift begins. A leaf does something unexpected. Instead of lying flat, it curls. At first, the curl is barely noticeable, a gentle inward fold that gives the leaf a shallow, spoon-like appearance. But with time, and with many generations of subtle refinement, the fold deepens. Edges arch upward. The leaf creates a basin. Eventually, a full container forms, something that looks less like a leaf and more like a tiny green bowl cradling a pool of rainwater. Evolution, observing this new structure, appears entirely satisfied with itself, as though declaring, "Of course, the solution was a bowl." Why didn't we think of this earlier? These early pitcher-like leaves are simple. They do not yet exhibit the flamboyant colors or intricate patterns of modern species, but they have discovered a principle that will change everything. Water, once captured, becomes a passive trap of its own. When an insect slips on the slick rim and tumbles into the liquid, escape becomes an exercise in diminishing hope. Wings cling to the wet surfaces. Legs find little traction. The water presses softly against the insect's body, an innocently calm barrier that proves surprisingly difficult to rise from. The plant remains motionless, as always. Nothing closes. Nothing constricts. There is no sudden movement that might betray an intention to capture. The leaf simply holds its shape, collecting rain through storms, drizzle, and morning dew until it becomes a stable reservoir. Over time, organic particles fall in. Dust, pollen, fragments of leaves, wandering microbes, and eventually, quite accidentally, small insects seeking a drink or a place to rest. Some insects drown quickly, others tire gradually as they struggle to climb the slick interior walls. Either way, the water becomes a broth of nutrients, slowly releasing its chemical potential into the leaf's inner lining. This is where the quiet brilliance of architecture meets biology. The inner surface of the pitcher begins evolving cells specialized for nutrient absorption. These cells resemble those found on the outside of earlier sticky traps, but are now protected inside a sheltered chamber, kept moist by rainwater and enriched by whatever organic material enters. Later still, primitive digestive enzymes seep from tiny pores, dissolving insect bodies with a gentleness that makes the whole process feel oddly polite. There is no brutality in this digestion, just a calm, steady breakdown, like a leaf humming softly while conducting its business. For the insects, however, the pitcher is a deceptive structure. Its rim appears harmless, a smooth curve, often colored faintly to mimic young leaves or ripening nectar. Some early pitchers even develop translucent windows near their tops, allowing sunlight to illuminate the interior in a way that suggests escape routes where none truly exist. These light patches confuse insects, who fly toward them repeatedly, exhausting themselves in the attempt to leave. Meanwhile, the water below waits patiently, indifferent to their struggle. Unlike sticky traps, these containers rely on shape rather than adhesion. Gravity becomes a quiet accomplice, guiding each step toward the water's surface. The plant does not expend energy to lure prey. It simply allows the world to fall in as it will. Even when the leaf curves into a complete cup, the plant remains a portrait of stillness. Its success derived entirely from design, not action. As millennia pass, pitcher shapes diversify. Some grow taller, collecting more water and creating deeper chambers that few insects can escape. Others widen, offering broader surfaces that catch falling debris. A few evolve subtle ridges along their rims, slippery, waxy surfaces that make footing treacherous for any creature small enough to investigate. These ridges reduce friction to such a degree that even the most determined climbers find themselves sliding gently into the waiting pool below, surprised but unable to reverse course. The environment encourages these innovations. Nutrient-poor soils continue to challenge plant life, and any mechanism that supplements root-based nutrition becomes a valuable evolutionary asset. Plants with more successful pitcher designs grow slightly larger, produce more seeds, and eventually dominate small corners of the wetland landscape. Their success is not explosive. They remain calmer, quieter participants in their habitat. But it is steady, shaping ecological interactions in subtle but lasting ways. The interior environment of the pitcher also begins to host its own microcosm. Rainwater mixes with leaf secretions, creating a mildly acidic solution ideal for slow digestion. Microorganisms colonize the chamber, assisting in breaking down organic matter in a miniature symbiotic partnership. Small larvae, tolerant of these conditions, slip through the water, feeding on detritus and occasionally on insects trapped before them. The pitcher becomes not just a trap, but a habitat, a tiny ecosystem contained within a single leaf. Yet through all this, the plant retains its gentle demeanor. It does not chase its prey. It does not snare them with force. It simply provides a perfectly shaped container and allows chance, gravity, and the occasional misstep to do the rest. This is evolution's architectural phase, when leaves began exploring form, volume, and interior space with quiet creativity. To the untrained eye, these early pitchers might seem ordinary, just elongated leaves holding water. But to evolution, they represent a revelation, a static structure capable of gathering resources without movement or energy expenditure. A bowl was indeed the correct solution, and nature, upon discovering this, begins to refine it with enthusiasm wrapped in patience. Thus, the stage is set for the next chapters of botanical ingenuity. The plants have learned to shape water, design chambers, and create environments as part of their strategy for survival. And all of it has unfolded without a single leaf needing to lift a finger. If leaves had fingers, which thankfully they do not. As the ancient wetlands continue their slow pulse of mist and sunlight, the early pitchers, those simple leaf bowls that once relied solely on shape, begin to evolve into more elaborate constructions. Their earliest forms had been serviceable enough, catching insects with little more than happenstance and accumulated rainwater. But evolution sees room for improvement. And so, with deliberate subtlety and no rush whatsoever, plants begin to refine the art of letting gravity do their work for them. The transformation begins at the rim. In early pitchers, the rim is merely the rolled edge of a leaf, firm and ordinary. But in some lineages, a slight waxiness develops. Nothing remarkable at first, just a faint sheen that moisture beads upon. Over time, this coating becomes smoother, almost glassy. To an insect landing there, the surface feels strangely uncooperative, like stepping onto a polished stone slick with the morning's dew. A single misplaced stride can send legs skittering sideways, and an insect that previously might have wandered freely now finds itself in a precarious dance with friction. As generations pass, the rim becomes not just smooth, but treacherous. Microscopic wax crystals clog the tiny claws of insects, preventing them from securing their usual foothold. The plant does not tighten around its visitors or lure them with flashy gestures. Instead, it quietly erases the reliability of their footing. One wrong step, one innocent misplacement of weight, and gravity takes over. The insect slides inward, legs scrambling in polite panic, until it reaches the threshold where balance becomes impossible. The fall is slow, undramatic, less a plunge and more a gentle surrender to inevitability. Evolution, it seems, has discovered that making escape difficult is often more reliable than attempting to capture prey outright. After all, these plants are not fast. They do not leap, snap, or coil, but they can make leaving inconvenient with such artistry that insects rarely notice the danger until they are already committed. This rim, dangerous as it becomes, is only one part of the refinement. Along the inner walls of the pitcher, new textures begin to appear. Fine hairs grow downward, thin, subtle structures aligned in a way that encourages descent but discourages ascent. To a climbing insect, the hairs feel like tiny steps angled the wrong direction, offering no support for upward escape. In effect, the plant creates a one-way path, easy to enter, impossibly frustrating to exit. Even the most determined insect finds itself sliding repeatedly, each attempt thwarted by the geometry of the leaf itself. These downward-pointing hairs are quiet triumphs of design. They do not require additional energy or movement. They simply exist, as unassuming as eyelashes, performing their role with unwavering commitment. If insects were capable of architectural critique, they might begrudgingly admire the efficiency, right before sliding back down for the 7th or 8th time. Meanwhile, another innovation takes root along the pitcher's upper lip. Nectar. Nectar is one of evolution's more charming strategies, a sweet liquid irresistible to many insects. At first, it appears accidentally, exuded in small quantities from glands originally used for moisture control. But evolution soon recognizes that this pleasant substance has a secondary function. It entices insects to explore more boldly than they otherwise might. A line of nectar along a pitcher's rim acts like a subtle invitation, a glistening trail that promises sweetness and adventure. The insects accept this invitation eagerly, guided by optimism and a belief that good things in nature rarely come with consequences. And, in fairness, evolution seldom punishes optimism outright. It merely exploits it. A distracted insect tasting nectar may wander closer to the rim's slick surface. A gust of wind may nudge it ever so slightly. A shift in weight may send it sliding, legs flailing into the chamber below. The plant need not do anything but remain still and hospitable. Rainwater, too, becomes an essential accomplice in this expanding trap system. As pitchers refine their shapes, many evolve funnels that guide rain inward, ensuring the chamber stays full, fresh, and ready. Heavy storms wash away debris, renew digestive fluids, and maintain the depth needed to drown or weaken struggling insects. Even droplets rolling down the outside of the pitcher create reflections that attract inquisitive insects, further increasing the chances of discovery and potential misstep. Slowly, these refinements create a trap so effective that it feels almost effortless. Plants that once relied solely on accidental drownings now capture prey with startling consistency, all without moving a single cell in real time. Their entire strategy is built upon leveraging the most reliable forces nature offers: gravity, surface tension, and the persistent hopefulness of small creatures searching for sweetness or shelter. The wetlands begin to shift subtly around these plants. In areas where pitchers thrive, fewer insects dare to traverse certain leaves. Some species become wary of glistening surfaces. Others remain blissfully unaware, continuing to slip into pitchers at predictable intervals. But the plants do not seek dominance. They simply occupy a niche, quietly extracting nutrients from the bodies that gravity delivers. What's remarkable is how politely this entire process unfolds. There is no violence, no sudden snap, no rapid constriction. An insect stumbles, falls, and is gently collected by the plant's architecture. Digestion is slow, composed, practically serene. Even the downward-pointing hairs behave more like guides than restraints, ushering guests toward a deeper pool without any showmanship. With these refinements, the pitcher plant moves into maturity, not as an aggressor, but as a master of passive engineering. Evolution, having chosen bowl-shaped innovation in earlier chapters, now seems delighted to accessorize the concept with wax, hairs, and nectar, creating a trap so subtle that insects often participate willingly. And so the art of capturing life becomes a matter of design, not movement, a celebration of gravity's patient pull and the optimism of insects who believe that sweet scents always lead to safety. Beneath the sunlit wetlands and bogs where sticky leaves and elegant pitchers practice their patient forms of capture, another world exists, quieter, darker, and far more crowded. It is a realm suspended in water where particles drift. Microorganisms flicker like living dust motes, and the boundary between plant and environment grows faint. Here, movement is soft, continuous, and utterly pervasive. For some plant lineages, this submerged world offers not only refuge from the dry air, but an entirely new evolutionary canvas. These aquatic plants begin life much like their terrestrial relatives, rooted, still, and content to gather sunlight. But life underwater poses challenges that sticky leaves and pitcher shapes simply cannot address. Glue washes away. Rims cannot stay dry enough to be slippery. Traps must work without relying on gravity or air currents. And so, pressed by the watery environment, evolution begins again, reimagining what carnivory looks like when everything is suspended in liquid. Slowly, the plants abandon surfaces meant for catching insects. Leaves become filamentous, delicate, and feathery, shaped to move with the water instead of against it. Their architecture grows light, almost skeletal, as though the plants are exhaling into thin strands. They float freely or anchor themselves loosely to the bottom, waving gently with the shifting currents. But while their structures appear fragile, their strategies become incredibly precise. Within these feathery leaves, small swellings begin to appear, minute bladders no larger than droplets of dew. At first, they hold simple air pockets, leftover spaces where cells folded imperfectly, or where dissolved oxygen collected by chance. But evolution senses opportunity in these microchambers. Over generations, the bladders develop flexible doors, thin membranes that close tightly but can be triggered open in an instant. Inside, the plant begins pumping out water, creating a vacuum-like space. A trap is forming, though no one in the water seems aware of it. This is the birth of the suction trap. Unlike sticky leaves or pitchers, suction traps work not through patience but through astonishing speed. The mechanism is so swift, in fact, that it unfolds faster than many visual systems, an act of predation occurring in a fraction of a blink. For an unsuspecting microorganism drifting past, the trap appears inert, a harmless bubble nestled among plant tissues. There is nothing about its appearance that suggests urgency or danger. But should a tiny creature brush against the delicate hairs that frame the bladder's entrance, the door snaps inward, the vacuum releases, and water rushes into the chamber, carrying the prey with it. The entire event is over in less than a millisecond. A creature that moments earlier floated freely now finds itself sealed inside a small, fluid-filled room, its world abruptly reduced to a quiet interior lit only by refracted sunlight. The plant, calm as always, begins releasing digestive enzymes, turning the trap into a minute processing chamber. No theatrics, no scrambling, just a simple chemical conversation between plant and prey. What makes this remarkable is how invisible it all is. Terrestrial carnivorous plants often show their methods: sticky glistens, curling leaves, towering pitchers. But in the underwater realm, carnivory becomes almost ghost-like. Bladders inflate and deflate with the rhythms of the trap cycle, the plant maintaining dozens or even hundreds of these tiny devices at once. Each bladder resets itself by pumping water back out, storing tension in the flexible walls until it is ready to fire again. To the casual observer, if casual observers existed at this microscopic scale, the plant's predatory lifestyle would be nearly imperceptible. It is ambush predation reduced to the smallest possible stage, hunting creatures so tiny they rarely cast shadows. And yet, these miniature kills contribute greatly to the plant's survival. Nutrients extracted from the trapped microorganisms allow aquatic carnivorous plants to thrive in waters where minerals remain scarce and competition for dissolved nutrients is fierce. The environment shapes the plants in other ways too. Because light scatters through water, these species often develop broader, more finely divided leaves to increase surface area for photosynthesis. Their root systems shrink or vanish entirely because the water itself provides buoyancy and transports nutrients. Their bodies become more like drifting green nets woven of delicate threads, with suction traps interspersed like silent beads. Some species refine their traps further still. They develop trigger hairs so sensitive that even the brush of a passing protozoan activates the suction. Their bladders grow more efficient, storing more elastic tension to create more powerful pulls. The door mechanisms become masterpieces of microscopic engineering, thin, flexible, and perfectly sealed until the moment of activation. Should evolution ever take pride in craftsmanship, it would likely point to these traps as an example of elegance in miniature. Yet perhaps the most extraordinary thing about these plants is how effortlessly their behavior blends into the surrounding water. To the untrained eye, nothing appears to be happening. To the drift of particles, the plants are merely obstacles. Even to many small creatures, the suction traps remain invisible until activated. Predation here is not a dramatic chase but a sudden change in pressure, a mechanical whisper. If humor can be applied to such subtlety, it lies in the fact that most prey never realize they've been hunted at all. One moment they are swimming, the next they are simply elsewhere, having crossed a threshold they did not know existed. The water doesn't ripple. The leaves don't twitch. The plant gives no sign that it has eaten. It simply resumes its gentle swaying, one more microscopic meal secured before any witness can take note. Thus, in the submerged quiet of ancient wetlands, carnivory takes on a new form, one defined by speed, invisibility, and the precise choreography of suction and release. These aquatic plants, though delicate in appearance, have mastered a predatory technique so quick and understated that it feels less like hunting and more like a trick of the water itself. Evolution, always appreciative of efficiency, watches with satisfaction as a new branch of botanical ingenuity unfolds beneath the surface. Up to this point in the long history of botanical carnivory, plants have relied almost exclusively on stillness, on shapes that coax, surfaces that deceive, and the simple patience of waiting for something edible to make the first mistake. But evolution, never entirely satisfied with a single approach, begins to experiment with a more startling idea. What if a plant could move not just slowly, not just by growing, but suddenly, decisively, within the span of a breath? In certain environments, this question becomes more than theoretical. Nutrient-poor soils continue to pressure plant lineages, pushing them toward alternatives that offer even the faintest competitive edge. Insects have grown more agile, more discerning, less likely to fall for simple adhesive droplets or architectural pitfalls. And so, in a few select plants, evolution quietly assembles the raw materials for something unprecedented. Rapid movement powered not by muscles, but by hydraulics and cellular geometry. It begins with the leaf. At first glance, these early active trap leaves look unremarkable. Flat, paired structures with tiny hairs scattered across the inner surfaces. But deep within the tissue, the cells along the midrib and edges begin developing an unusual property. They can shift their internal pressure almost instantaneously. When at rest, the leaf remains open, inviting sunlight as any other leaf would. But when a stimulus touches one of the sensitive hairs, once, twice in quick succession, a cascade of electrical signals sweeps across the leaf, faster than anyone expects from a plant. Water shifts between cells, turgor changes ripple outward, and suddenly the leaf snaps shut. The movement is not dramatic by animal standards, but for a plant, it is astonishing. A moment ago, the leaf lay open. Now it folds like a green jaw, enclosing the small space between its lobes. Trapped inside is whatever triggered the mechanism, sometimes a nutritious insect, sometimes a wandering leaf particle that earns the plant nothing but wasted effort. This risk is the delicate cost of movement. To act too quickly is to exhaust energy needlessly, but to act too slowly is to lose a meal. This balance leads to refinement. The hairs, originally generic sensory structures, evolve a timing threshold. A single touch becomes insufficient. The plant waits for a second signal within a narrow window of time, a strategy that prevents accidental closures caused by raindrops or drifting debris. Only when two triggers occur does the trap commit to movement. In this way, the plant learns to differentiate between noise and opportunity, conserving precious energy with silent wisdom. The insects, for their part, are utterly unprepared. They wander across the leaves as they always have, brushing against a hair or two without consequence, until the second touch, when the leaf closes in a swift green arc. The insect leaps, flutters, or scrambles, but the trap holds firm, its edges sealed by interlocking cilia that form a temporary cage. Inside, the air grows still. The leaf begins a second phase of movement, slow tightening, drawing the two lobes closer as enzymes begin to seep from specialized glands. Nothing is rushed. The initial snap is merely the plant's way of saying, "Stay," while the true work unfolds with gentle finality. Although this mechanism seems purposeful, it evolves through countless small steps. Pressure-responsive cells become slightly more sensitive. Electrical impulses travel a bit faster. The lobes develop curvature that reinforces closure. Over many generations, the leaf transforms into a living hinge, flexible, responsive, and astonishingly efficient. It is not violent. It is not aggressive. It is simply practical, a calculated response to a world where nutrients must be captured with precision. Still, movement requires energy. Plants cannot afford to snap shut at every provocation, so selection favors individuals that strike a balance between vigilance and restraint. The resulting traps behave almost thoughtfully, waiting for confirmation, responding with exactitude, and closing only when the odds of reward are sufficiently high. If patience shaped earlier chapters of carnivory, timing becomes the new theme. Readiness without haste, action without frenzy. One could imagine evolution watching with quiet satisfaction, seeing that plants have discovered how to move with purpose. Not constantly, there is no need for drama, but in sudden, decisive bursts. It is as though evolution whispered, "Patience is admirable, but sometimes you simply need to close the leaf." This shift has broader ecological consequences. Insects begin to recognize the danger belatedly, hesitating when crossing these strange paired leaves. Some species evolve strategies to avoid them altogether, stepping gingerly around the trigger hairs, or learning to escape before the lobes fully seal. Others fall victim repeatedly, supplying nutrients to plants that grow just a little stronger, a little larger each season. The plants themselves remain serene despite their newfound agility. They do not tremble or twitch when waiting. They do not pace, stalk, or anticipate. They remain rooted, silent green sculptures that only reveal their hidden speed when touched. After the trap closes, they slowly press their lobes together, sealing the chamber like a green envelope. Digestion begins quietly, without a ripple. When the meal is finished, the trap reopens, a calm spiral of motion that releases the leftover exoskeleton, resetting the leaf for its next opportunity. Through these innovations, movement becomes a tool, a rare, conserved burst of activity in a life defined by stillness. Where other carnivorous strategies rely on patience or architecture, these active traps rely on timing, the right moment, the right touch, the right decision to spend a bit of stored energy for a potentially rich reward. And thus, in the gradual unfolding of botanical evolution, plants step into a new realm, one where movement becomes part of their language. Not frantic movement, not ceaseless movement, but a single swift gesture that changes the story of an insect's day. A gesture born not from aggression, but from necessity, crafted by scarcity and perfected through calm precision. A leaf that once lay quietly now holds the power to act, choosing in a fraction of a second whether to remain open or to close upon opportunity. It is a choice made without thought, yet shaped by millions of years of refinement. Patience is still good, these plants seem to say. But timing, well, timing is better. In the hush of nutrient-poor wetlands, active traps, those swift, snapping leaves that startled the world with their sudden motion, begin to mature into their next evolutionary phase. They have proven that movement can solve the problem of scarce nutrients, but speed, while effective, comes at a price. Every snap requires energy, and energy is the one currency these plants never have in abundance. And so nature introduces a new lesson for the lively leaves. Efficiency is not just about acting quickly, but about knowing when not to act at all. The early incarnations of these fast traps had one notable flaw: enthusiasm. A single touch on a sensitive hair triggered a full snap, regardless of the cause. An insect stepping lightly across the leaf? Snap. A falling seed brushing the surface? Snap. A raindrop landing with just enough force to trigger the signal? Snap. The plant's reflex was admirable, impressive even, but not particularly discerning. Many traps closed on nothing of value, spending precious resources for no nutritional gain. For the plant, each closure was more than a momentary inconvenience. The leaf had to expend metabolic energy to shut, further energy to seal in preparation for digestion, and still more energy to reopen days later, once the process finished. And a false alarm carried a punishing irony. The trap reopened empty, having consumed energy but gained nothing. Too many of these misfires weakened the plant, reducing its growth and reproductive success. Speed, it seemed, had a hidden cost. Thus begins a long chapter of evolutionary refinement. Learning restraint. The traps that survived best were those that behaved with a touch more skepticism. Their sensitive hairs became tuned not just to movement, but to patterns of movement. A single brush no longer set the trap off. Instead, the hairs required a second stimulus within a narrow time frame, a confirmation that something more substantial than rain or floating debris was present. This shift marked the appearance of what biologists would later call mechanical counting, a simple numerical threshold built into plant physiology. It is a remarkable adaptation. A leaf lacking nerves or a brain begins to behave as though it is making decisions. It waits, it listens, it analyzes touch as a sequence rather than an isolated event. The second touch triggers the electrical signal that activates the closure mechanism, but only if timed correctly. Too slow, and the leaf dismisses the event entirely. Too weak, and the leaf assumes it was nothing important. In effect, the plant learns not to overreact. Evolution, always pleased with a well-balanced system, builds upon this newfound restraint. The hairs themselves become more finely tuned. Their bases stiffen slightly, making them less responsive to the weight of raindrops, but still sensitive to the deliberate steps of crawling insects. Some traps evolve slight variations in spacing, creating zones of increased responsiveness in areas most likely to be walked upon by prey. Others enhance the electrical conduction speed across the leaf, ensuring that meaningful signals reach the closure mechanism swiftly, while noise fades before triggering a full reaction. As a result, carnivory becomes cautious rather than eager. The traps still snap with astonishing speed when triggered correctly, but the decision to close now reflects a delicate balance between opportunity and cost. Each closure must be justified. Each movement must promise a return worth the expenditure. The wetlands, always stingy with nutrients, push these plants toward frugality, not simply in their growth, but in their very gestures. They become masters of measured reaction. Meanwhile, insects adapt as well. Some learn to tread lightly, testing the hairs without committing weight. Others dart across the trap so quickly that even two touches occur too far apart to register as a valid signal. The plants, in response, refine again. Slow-moving insects, those most likely to be captured, remain the primary targets. Traps begin favoring prey that lingers, triggering the hairs in patterns the plants recognize as promising. This evolutionary dialogue shapes not only behavior, but structure. The trigger hairs grow slightly longer in some species, shorter in others, optimized for the size and movement of the insects most commonly available. The electrical network within the leaves becomes more efficient, reducing the chance that external temperature shifts or internal fluctuations will cause premature closure. The hinges strengthen, allowing repeated use without structural fatigue. Every improvement hinges on the same principle. Movement is valuable only when necessary. Plants, of course, do not consciously learn. But if they did, one might imagine them muttering a quiet mantra. Think twice before you snap. Their caution does not diminish their capability. On the contrary, it sharpens it. When a trap does close, it does so with conviction, knowing the stimulus was meaningful. The closure feels less like an impulse and more like a calculated response, swift, precise, and energy-savvy. The plant avoids the pitfalls that plagued its ancestors, ensuring that each movement contributes towards survival rather than depleting it. This newfound refinement reshapes entire ecosystems. Insects begin behaving more carefully in areas dominated by active traps, even if they don't quite understand why. Predators in the area may find more partially digested remains scattered near plants that miscalculated early triggers. But over time, false alarms become rare. The plant's systems become so polished that even environmental disturbances, wind brushing the leaves, vibrations through the soil, rarely provoke a closure. In this stage of evolution, carnivorous plants master not just action, but restraint. They embody a kind of botanical wisdom. Speed is powerful, but only when applied sparingly. The swift snap that once fired at the slightest touch now waits patiently for a clear sign. The trap no longer behaves like an overexcited creature startled by every falling raindrop. It behaves like a calm observer who knows exactly when to move and when to remain still. Patience shaped the early chapters of carnivory. Architecture shaped the middle. And now, discernment shapes the plants that choose movement as their strategy. It is a quiet lesson etched into the green of their leaves. Sometimes the most successful reaction is the one you save until it truly counts. As carnivorous plants continued carving out their quiet niche in nutrient-poor landscapes, a new chapter of ingenuity began. One that did not involve sharper traps, faster motion, or more elaborate structures. Instead, evolution leaned into an idea as old as life itself: collaboration. Where earlier adaptations had required the plant to manage everything on its own, capturing prey, sealing it in, dissolving tissues with enzymes. Some lineages discovered that they didn't actually need to shoulder all the labor themselves. Not when the microscopic world was full of specialists eager for a place to live. It began subtly, as most evolutionary stories do. Organic debris, fragments of insects, drifting pollen, dust, fell into the digestive pools of certain traps. Whether these pools were open pitchers or water-filled conduits, they provided stable microenvironments with moisture, shade, and an ongoing supply of nutrients. Bacteria and fungi, already wandering through the ecosystems looking for usable niches, found these miniature wetlands irresistible. And once they settled in, something remarkable happened. They began breaking down the trapped material faster and more efficiently than the plant could manage alone. At first, the plant simply absorbed the byproducts of this decay without acknowledging the assistance. Nutrients released by bacterial activity seeped across the inner surfaces of the trap, crossing membranes designed to capture dissolved minerals. The microbes, unaware of their new role, continued decomposing whatever drifted their way. Yet over time, a pattern formed. In traps where microbial residents flourished, the plant grew more vigorously. Its leaves stretched wider. Its roots, however small, fed on a richer internal reservoir of nitrogen and phosphorus. Meanwhile, plants with cleaner, microbe-free interiors lagged, deprived of the extra efficiency that bacteria provided. Evolution, ever attentive, nudged the relationship forward. The plant's trap environment began to shift in subtle, supportive ways. Some species developed slightly acidic fluids, not so harsh as to kill the microbes, but just acidic enough to discourage competitors that might disrupt the community. Others produced compounds that stabilized the trap's internal chemistry, creating conditions in which beneficial bacteria thrived. The microbes, for their part, adapted as well, becoming more tolerant of plant secretions and specializing in breaking down the specific types of prey the plant tended to catch. This quiet alliance deepened until the plant and its microbial residents became partners in digestion. The plant offered a home, protected chambers filled with moisture, a steady supply of organic material, and a stable habitat free from sudden disturbance. In return, the microbes handled the rigorous work of decomposition, releasing amino acids, ammonium, and other valuable minerals that the plant absorbed almost effortlessly. What had once been a solitary digestive act became a communal effort, far more efficient than either partner could achieve alone. If evolution were to explain this development with a hint of humor, it might say, "Why expend energy dissolving prey when you can simply hire specialists?" The efficiency gains were transformative. In some plants, the role of the plant's own digestive enzymes diminished, reduced to a supporting function. The leaves still secreted fluids, but these now served more as a welcoming medium, a chemical backdrop in which bacteria could flourish, than as the primary mechanism for breaking down prey. This shift marked a significant milestone. Carnivory was no longer a self-contained process. It had become a community affair. Within these traps, miniature ecosystems emerged. Besides bacteria, small invertebrates, midge larvae, mosquito larvae, tiny aquatic worms found refuge inside the digestive pools. These creatures fed on the prey fragments, and in turn, their waste contributed additional nutrients to the plant. Some even helped prevent the buildup of debris that could clog the trap, inadvertently maintaining the plant's digestive system through their restless movements. The trap became a world unto itself, humming with microscopic life and layered interactions. The plants did not micromanage these tenants. They simply provided the conditions in which mutual benefit could unfold. By hosting microbial communities, they expanded their ability to extract nutrients from prey of all types, large, small, soft-bodied, armored, relying on the combined metabolic toolkit of organisms far more chemically versatile than plant tissues alone could ever be. This teamwork offered another unexpected advantage: resilience. If prey availability dwindled, the microbes persisted, feeding on whatever organic material remained. When a new insect fell in, they were ready to resume full decomposition mode within minutes. The plant no longer had to manage digestion from scratch after periods of scarcity. The microbial assembly line remained active, steady, efficient. Through this collaboration, carnivorous plants became quiet recyclers, transforming life into sustenance with a finesse that bordered on ecological artistry. They didn't compete with their microbial partners. They cooperated, recognizing, at least in evolutionary terms, that an outsourced digestion department was far more cost-effective. And so carnivory shifted once more, not toward greater aggression or sharper trap design, but toward symbiosis. Plants that had already mastered stillness, architecture, and speed now mastered partnership. The invisible world of bacteria and decay became part of their identity, shaping the internal processes that fueled their growth. In their roots, stems, and leaves, these plants remained unmistakably themselves. But within their traps, unseen by casual observers, a bustling workforce of microbes carried out a delicate chemistry that elevated plant and partner alike. It is an unspoken pact, forged not by intention, but by time. You give us a home, say the microbes, and we'll take care of the mess. And the plant, ever efficient, ever economical, quietly accepts. After all, in a world governed by scarcity, even evolution appreciates a bit of teamwork. As the tapestry of Earth's landscapes continued to weave itself into hills, wetlands, forests, and plains, carnivorous plants, already remarkable in their ingenuity, began a new era of refinement. They had mastered stickiness, architecture, suction, and even quiet partnerships with microbes. But evolution, delighted by the breadth of possibilities, now nudged them toward specialization. Rather than catching whatever happened to tumble, wander, or drift into their traps, some species began focusing on particular prey, honing their designs and strategies with an elegance that bordered on artistry. This shift didn't happen overnight. In the earliest phases, carnivorous plants captured a wide range of organisms simply because they could. Flies, beetles, mites, the occasional unlucky spider. But as environments diversified, so too did opportunities. Different habitats offered different prey in varying abundance. A bog rich with ants, a lake surface vibrating with mosquito larvae, a patch of moss humming with springtails. Plants that tailored their traps to the most readily available prey began thriving with greater consistency. And so carnivory grew selective. In some forests and peatlands, ants became the most predictable food source, endlessly marching, endlessly curious. Plants in these regions began to adapt. Their traps developed narrow, tubular shapes with small entrances, perfectly sized for ants but inconvenient for larger insects. They produced scents that mimicked the chemical signals ants use to communicate, subtle enough to intrigue the foragers, but not so blatant as to raise suspicion. Some even grew rim structures that resembled the pathways ants naturally follow, guiding them with a confidence that bordered on misplaced optimism. These plants didn't simply catch ants, they designed their traps for them, as though choosing a preferred entree from the bustle of available life. Elsewhere, near glistening surfaces of shallow waters, another specialization emerged: mosquito hunters. Mosquito larvae wriggled in pools, puddles, and pitcher chambers, forming tiny, temporary bursts of biomass. Certain carnivorous plants adapted their fluid chemistry to create an irresistible refuge, a place where larvae could slip inside to feed on detritus, unaware they were stepping into a digestive chamber that thickened gradually as they grew. Some plants timed the viscosity changes with remarkable precision, fluid thin enough for newly hatched larvae to enter, but dense enough later to hinder their escape just when the nutritional payoff peaked. It was predation by patience, and the larvae, busy navigating their tiny world, rarely recognized the shift until they were dissolving into the ecosystem their movement had once stirred. Still other carnivorous plants targeted microscopic prey, not because they couldn't catch larger insects, but because they lived in environments rich with single-celled organisms, rotifers, and small aquatic crustaceans. These plants refined their suction traps or evolved even tinier structures, invisible to the casual observer. Their traps fired with incredible precision, capturing creatures smaller than a grain of sand. It was carnivory at the scale of quiet dust motes, and the plants excelled at it. They needed no elaborate coloration, no enticing scents, only the slightest touch of a drifting organism and a trap that reacted with perfect timing. Through specialization, each plant lineage discovered a rhythm that matched its surroundings. In dense, humid forests where winged insects blundered frequently, some species evolved wide, slippery rims that enticed larger flying prey. Their traps became deeper, reinforced, and chemically optimized to break down tough exoskeletons. In windswept heaths, where prey was sparse, other plants developed traps that favored nutrient-rich insects, beetles, for instance, investing energy in fewer but more rewarding meals. Even subtle differences in climate could sculpt the direction of specialization. Plants in cooler environments refined slower digestive processes that preserved trapped insects from decaying too quickly, while those in warmer climates embraced rapid breakdown to avoid losing nutrients to evaporation or opportunistic microbes. This shift toward selective predation also shaped behavior in unexpected ways. Some carnivorous plants adopted visual mimicry, coloration that resembled safe landing pads or promising nectar guides, specifically tailored to the perceptual abilities of the prey they most desired. Others modified their scents to imitate rotting fruit, decaying foliage, or insect pheromones, depending on which signals attracted their favored prey. The traps didn't just exist anymore. They communicated subtly with the surrounding ecosystem, whispering invitations to the exact creatures they were built to catch. In this era, carnivory became less about quantity and more about quality. A plant could catch 10 unsuitable insects and gain little from them, or it could catch one perfectly targeted prey and flourish. Specialization allowed plants to invest their limited resources wisely. They became connoisseurs of their ecosystems, not picky for the sake of preference, but picky because survival demanded strategy. If there is humor in this evolutionary chapter, it lies in imagining a plant evaluating potential prey with quiet discernment, as if murmuring, "That one is too crunchy, that one too small. Ah yes, this one will do nicely." In reality, of course, these refinements emerged from genetic variation and selection pressure, not conscious choice. But the analogy captures the spirit of this period. Carnivorous plants began tailoring their traps to the lifestyles and weaknesses of specific organisms. Specialization also meant plants were no longer in direct competition with every other carnivorous species. Ant hunters did not compete with mosquito trappers. Microscopic suction specialists had no quarrel with those targeting beetles. Each lineage claimed its own niche, reducing overlap and allowing an astonishing diversity of strategies to evolve side by side. on a single wetland ridge, one might find half a dozen carnivorous species, each shaped by its own quiet logic, each catching something different. In this way, the ecosystems themselves became layered tapestries of interactions, food webs woven not just horizontally, but vertically, in dimensions defined by size, behavior, and timing. Carnivorous plants, once generalists responding to scarcity, had become refined participants in these webs, fitting themselves into ecological roles that were both precise and stable. And so the story of carnivorous evolution reached a new, intricate stage, one where plants did not simply adapt to survive, but adapted to thrive by understanding, through slow, patient time, exactly which prey mattered most. Here, carnivory matured into a specialist's craft, shaped by the subtle art of choosing the right target in a world full of possibilities. The world does not remain still for long. Continents drift, air currents shift, and climates ebb between extremes with a patience matched only by the plants that inhabit them. For carnivorous plants, those quiet hunters of nutrient-poor landscapes, evolution has reached a point where clever traps, refined strategies, and specialized diets are no longer enough. The environment begins to impose challenges that insects alone cannot solve. Fire sweeps through dry seasons. Wetlands shrink under prolonged drought. Frost settles where warmth once lingered. And the plants, rooted as ever, must adapt not just to catching prey, but to surviving the year itself. This chapter of evolution is not about improving traps or designing better lures. It is about resilience, how carnivorous plants learn to persist when the world turns harsh and unpredictability becomes the rule. The first challenges come with seasonal dryness. In regions where wet and dry seasons alternate, carnivorous plants face a dilemma. Their traps, delicate and finely tuned, cannot function without moisture. Sticky mucilage dries to useless threads. Pitcher pools evaporate. Snap traps lose turgor pressure, collapsing into limp, unresponsive shells. No amount of clever engineering can compensate for a simple lack of water. And so these plants begin to take on a new skill: dormancy. Dormancy is a kind of botanical hibernation, a state in which the plant withdraws into itself, slows its metabolism to a whisper, and waits for conditions to return. Some species retreat into a tight rosette, hugging the soil to conserve moisture. Others form compact, hardened buds tucked safely beneath a protective layer of dead leaves. And still others take the more dramatic approach of disappearing almost entirely above the surface, leaving only a quiet rootstock hidden beneath the soil. During this time, they do not eat, they do not catch, they do not grow, they simply endure. One might imagine them mumbling to themselves, "Yes, insects are delicious, but unfortunately they do not stop the sun from drying my pond." In other regions, the threat comes not from dryness, but from cold. Frost can damage delicate trapped tissues, freezing water inside the cells and rupturing them from within. To survive winters that bite deeply into the landscape, some carnivorous plants evolve underground storage organs: bulbs, tubers, rhizomes, structures thickened with starches and nutrients gathered during the growing season. These underground reserves act like life capsules, insulated, sheltered, waiting for spring's return. Above ground, their traps wither and vanish in the cold, but underground, the plants remain alive, holding tightly to the promise of warmer days. When temperatures rise and the soil softens, new leaves emerge, slowly at first, like cautious explorers checking the weather before committing to a journey. The traps return last, only when the plant trusts that frost has truly passed. Fire introduces yet another variable. In some habitats, particularly those shaped by lightning and dry season winds, fire is not a rare visitor, but a regular sculptor of the land. Flames sweep across open wetlands, burning grasses and shrubs, clearing accumulated plant matter and heating the soil surface. For carnivorous plants, whose delicate traps might resemble tinder more than armor, the threat seems insurmountable. But evolution responds with adaptations suited to flame as much as to insect prey. Some species adopt subterranean strategies similar to those used for winter, storing their energy deep enough beneath the soil that fire cannot reach them. When the flames pass, they re-emerge, sometimes with more vigor than before, as competing vegetation has been cleared away. In fact, certain carnivorous plants even rely on post-fire environments to thrive, benefiting from increased sunlight and reduced shading. Others develop seeds with remarkable heat tolerance. These seeds survive in the soil during fires and germinate only once temperatures return to safe levels. The flames become not a threat, but a cue, signaling new opportunity in the ecosystem's reset. In regions shaped by cycles of drought and flood, carnivorous plants refine seasonal rhythms. Some grow during the wet months, building traps and capturing prey while water is abundant, then retreat into dormancy as drought approaches. Others evolve floating growth forms, allowing them to follow the waterline as it rises and falls. Some even synchronize their reproductive cycles with seasonal insect abundance, ensuring that the next generation begins when food is most available. All these strategies, dormancy, underground storage, seasonal timing, illustrate a profound truth about the lives of carnivorous plants. Catching insects is useful, but endurance keeps them alive. Carnivory is only one of their tools. It supplements their diet, but does not exempt them from the demands of climate, geography, and time. A plant cannot snap at an insect when frozen under snow, nor lure prey while sealed in a dormant bud. And yet, their persistence is extraordinary. Even after months without feeding, many carnivorous plants reawaken fully capable of rebuilding traps, resuming their place in the intricate dance between plant and insect. Their strategies for survival remain as elegant as their methods of capture, quiet, patient, rooted in cycles older than any individual leaf could comprehend. This chapter of evolution doesn't sparkle with the drama of snapping traps or the architecture of pitchers. Instead, it speaks to continuity, the long, slow skill of living through change. Carnivorous plants learn to retreat without giving up, to shrink without surrendering, to conserve energy with the meticulous restraint of organisms who understand that sometimes the best strategy is simply to wait. In a world that burns, freezes, dries, and shifts beneath their roots, these plants reveal a wisdom deeper than their traps alone suggest. They show that survival is not a single act, but a rhythm, an ongoing negotiation with the environment. And if they could speak, perhaps they would admit, with quiet humor, that while insects are undeniably helpful, bugs alone won't solve everything. Sometimes the most important thing a carnivorous plant can catch is time. Despite their unusual appetites and their inventive methods for acquiring nutrients, carnivorous plants never emerge as villains in the ecosystems they inhabit. Their traps may look theatrical, gleaming fluid chambers, delicately hinged jaws, droplets that glisten like beads of temptation. But beneath these captivating designs lies an ecological role defined not by aggression, but by balance. In fact, carnivory itself is less a declaration of dominance and more a practical accommodation to nutrient-poor environments. A quiet compromise in which plants do what they must, while remaining surprisingly gentle contributors to the world around them. By this point in evolutionary history, carnivorous plants have refined their traps, honed their strategies, and learned when to save energy and when to act. Yet these traits do not place them at the top of any food chain. They do not ravage insect populations or upset ecological cycles with unchecked predation. Their appetite is modest, their energy demands small, and their pace slow. A single fly or ant offers days' worth of nutrients. A handful of meals across a season might carry a plant through its reproductive cycle. Far from being voracious, carnivorous plants live like quiet gatherers, taking only what they need. Their presence in an ecosystem often benefits far more organisms than it harms. Consider the open pitchers found across wetlands and forests. Though designed to catch insects, they inevitably serve as tiny habitats. Rainwater fills the chambers, creating microponds where insect larvae, small crustaceans, and even certain species of frogs or mosquito relatives find refuge. These small residents do not necessarily perish inside the trap. Some species have evolved to tolerate or even thrive within the plant's digestive fluids. They feed on debris, break down larger prey into more accessible nutrients, or prey upon insects that fall in later. In many cases, they contribute to the plant's digestive efficiency or help maintain the fluid's clarity, unintentionally assisting their unlikely landlord. The plant, unmoved by the irony, tolerates these guests with calm indifference. It does not evict them, nor does it alter its trap to eliminate them. Instead, it coexists, weaving them into its internal cycle. Carnivory here creates not a site of destruction, but a tiny, layered ecosystem, one where predator and prey roles blur, where cooperation and competition intermingle within the walls of a single leaf. Elsewhere, sticky traps support different communities. Their broad, gleaming surfaces may catch midges or small flies, but beneath their leaves, mosses nestle, tiny spiders build homes, and sheltered soil microbes flourish. The nutrients the plant absorbs ultimately cycle back into the local environment. As leaves die and decompose, they release minerals that enrich the nearby soil, indirectly supporting organisms far beyond the traps themselves. Even snap traps, those famed for their quick reflexes, affect ecological balance gently. Their closures are targeted, precise, and infrequent. A trap might capture a few insects per month, and often selects prey that other predators overlook. Clumsy wanderers, moisture-seeking insects, or individuals already weakened by age or competition. In this way, carnivorous plants act almost like ecological editors, removing surplus or vulnerable individuals without altering the broader tapestry of insect populations. They are not disruptive. They are simply part of the quiet pruning processes that stabilize ecosystems. This mild approach to predation is mirrored in the plant's relationships with other organisms. Some species serve as shelter for small creatures seeking shade or moisture. Others provide resting points for passing insects, nectar for pollinators, or perches for tiny amphibians navigating dense wetlands. Their traps may be lethal only under certain conditions. Their flowers, by contrast, are safe zones, extravagant, colorful signals set high above the danger of the traps to ensure visiting pollinators do not accidentally become prey. It is a thoughtful architectural choice, one that reveals the delicate diplomacy at work. Eat insects, yes, but not the ones that help reproduction. Even the timing of digestion reflects this gentle balance. Some carnivorous plants slow their enzymatic breakdown during periods when local insect populations face environmental strain, capturing fewer prey as a natural byproduct of reduced activity. Long-term scarcity, rather than prompting frantic aggression, leads to dormancy or reduced trap building, a quiet acknowledgement that ecosystems need time to recover. In places where carnivorous plants become established, larger nutrient cycles shift in subtle ways. Nitrogen, rare in bog waters and sandy flats, becomes concentrated in small pockets around these plants. Their bodies accumulate nutrients drawn from the insects they digest, and when the plants die or shed foliage, those nutrients are released back into the environment. What begins as predation ends as enrichment, slow, gentle redistribution across landscapes that would otherwise remain impoverished. Evolution, in this chapter, seems less interested in the spectacle of predation and more invested in the artistry of coexistence. Carnivory appears not as conquest, but as a negotiated agreement between plant and habitat. You cannot draw enough nutrients from the soil, the environment whispers, but you may take what the air provides, sparingly, thoughtfully, respectfully, and so the plants comply. If humor belongs in such a serene ecological portrait, it is found in the idea that even predators can be polite. Carnivorous plants do not chase, intimidate, or overwhelm. They do not upset the balance around them. Instead, they participate in their ecosystems as quiet caretakers, recycling nutrients, hosting tiny communities, contributing to soil health, and capturing only the prey that chance or curiosity leads into their traps. Their carnivory is not a story of cruelty. It is the story of compromise, a creative prévention, gentle solution to the ancient problem of living in a world where the ground beneath them insisted on giving almost nothing. In their stillness, these plants reveal a truth about nature. Survival does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. In the modern world, where forests stretch into mountain valleys, wetlands glimmer beneath drifting mists, tundras shiver under pale skies, and tropical rains carve shadows into emerald understories. Carnivorous plants persist as small, shining echoes of an ancient story. They are the living result of millions of years of quiet refinement, the sum of stillness, patience, restraint, and endless adaptation. They sit rooted at the edges of ponds, tucked into sphagnum carpets, perched on sunlit rock faces, or floating delicately on still lakes. Each carrying a lineage shaped not by dominance but by subtle negotiations with scarcity. Today's carnivorous plants are often small compared to the vast landscapes that host them. A Venus flytrap, no larger than a child's palm, waits on sandy Carolina savannas, sandy flats that are seasonally wet, occasionally burned, and consistently nutrient-poor. Yet the plant remains calm, its open traps no sign of hunger's urgency, but rather symbols of readiness. Each open leaf is a quiet promise. When something comes, I will respond. Until then, I rest. The flytrap's famous snap is almost never hurried. It is triggered only when necessary, when the right touches align, when the effort will be worthwhile. After millions of years, the plant has learned to treat energy like gold. In the tropical world, pitcher plants rise like delicate sculptures along the forest floor, or cling to the trunks of trees where sunlight filters best. Some hold pitchers the size of teacups. Others cradle vessels large enough to shelter small mammals seeking shade. These pitchers brim with rainwater tinted by the plant's secretions, fluids of varying clarity, acidity, and viscosity, each tailored to the kinds of prey the species specializes in. A mosquito might wriggle within one, a termite might tumble into another. In larger pitchers, even small vertebrates may occasionally slip inside. Yet despite these dramatic possibilities, the plants themselves remain almost monastic in demeanor. They do not celebrate their catches. They do not mourn their losses. They simply continue, leaf by leaf, pitcher by pitcher, building the quiet architecture their ancestors began. Other species, the sundews, the butterworts, the bladderworts floating in silent ponds, carry the same patient legacy. A sundew glitters in the morning sun, each dewdrop of mucilage a tiny lens reflecting the sky. The drops appear ornamental, but their purpose is practical: to hold on to what the soil refuses to provide. Beside them, butterworts unfold rosettes with surfaces that shine like polished glass. Their stickiness is almost invisible, a soft trap that waits politely for wandering midges or mosquitoes to land. And beneath the water's surface, bladderworts fire their suction traps too quickly for the human eye to track, showing that even when they act with incredible speed, the decision to act is measured and deliberate, never wasteful. Humans who encounter these plants often read drama where there is none, imagining carnivorous species as fierce or monstrous simply because they consume insects. Yet the closer one observes them, the more that perception dissolves. A flytrap waits with the calm of a meditating creature. A pitcher plant stands like a sculpted vase, observing the world pass around it. A sundew bends toward its prey with a gentleness bordering on tenderness. These are not aggressive hunters. They are botanists of survival, plants that have embraced unconventional methods because their environments demanded creative solutions. Their impact on ecosystems today is subtle but essential. By capturing insects, they influence nutrient flow across small, delicate environments, turning mobile life into stationary nourishment. They host microhabitats that shelter larvae, fungi, and bacteria. They enrich soils upon their death, contributing minerals that support neighboring plants. They even provide important resources for pollinators, carefully separating their flowers from their traps so that visitors collecting nectar do not inadvertently become victims. These plants are participants, not interruptions, in the ecosystems they inhabit. What makes modern carnivorous plants especially intriguing is that they continue to evolve. New species are discovered each decade, some found in mountain ridges barely explored, others tucked into wetlands long overlooked. Variations emerge in trap size, shape, coloration, and behavior. Some pitcher plants develop waxy surfaces that cause insects to tumble like beads down a slide. Others produce scents mimicking the favorite foods of local insects. Sundews refine the speed and sensitivity of their tentacle movements. Bladderwort species diverge in the geometry of their suction bladders, adjusting to prey that differ by mere fractions of a millimeter. In this ongoing quiet evolution, one sees clearly that carnivorous plants are not relics frozen in time. They are active participants in the present, still sculpted by the pressures of soil, climate, and competition. Their traps are not fixed designs, but draft sketches endlessly revised by the long pen of natural selection. Even now, they explore new possibilities, new leaf geometries, new chemical blends, new timing strategies. Their hunger is unchanged, but the ways they express it continue to shift, adapting with the same quiet determination that marked their entire history. Perhaps the most poetic truth of all is this: carnivorous plants thrive not by overpowering the world, but by harmonizing with it. They absorb sunlight, sway gently in the breeze, converse silently with microbes, cradle rainwater, and open and close their traps with the discipline of carefully timed breath. They do not chase opportunity. They wait for it, poised but never hurried. If evolution were a storyteller, carnivorous plants would be the characters who remind us that survival does not always demand speed or force. Sometimes it requires stillness, attentiveness, and the willingness to innovate only when necessary. Even in the present day, with competition fierce and climates shifting, these plants remain anchored and composed, unyielding in their patience, confident in their unique methods. They are living proof that hunger need not roar. It can whisper. It can shimmer. It can curl into the shape of a leaf or unfold into a dew-laden rosette. It can hide in a tiny underwater bladder or stretch into a pitcher filled with sky-reflecting water. And evolution, never one to rush, even when dinner is involved, continues to shape them with the same slow, deliberate care it has shown since their story first began.